Before we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. This episode is brought to you by Beniked Commercial Real Estate. There's more to building wealth in real estate than simply buying and holding. You need to have an entry and exit strategy. You need to know when to invest, have a plan to maximize return during the holding period, and have an exit strategy to sell and exchange the property into a bigger investment. This takes a set of highly qualified professionals to guide you from buying your first investment property to eventually upgrading to the 100-unit complex, providing wealth for you and your family. Brian Beniked and David Peel have over 35 years of combined experience specializing in helping families build wealth through real estate. They assist you in putting your investment on autopilot and will guide you along each exchange. Visit them at www.bcre.co. Again, that's www.bcre.co to give your future a jumpstart. The Bay Area housing market has been scorching hot over the last year as high demands and low supplies have created the seller's market unlike any seen in over 10 years. But in August, this trend started to slow. As prices trickle downward and selling slows down, is this just a temporary hiccup or is it a sign of something else to come? Today we welcome back Alex Lopez to talk about how recent housing trends could impact the future market. I've got a listing in Emeryville that, in July when I was running comps for my client, it came out to, I think there were 17 active and pending listings. So 17 properties up for sale.
Damn.
I just checked it 2 days ago, 44.
Damn. Yeah. It's
That's
gone
a
up.
big inventory jump.
Oh, yeah. Huge. I was just looking up Concord itself because I do quite a bit of business out there. And I was looking just to see how much is active homes that are 3 bedrooms or more. And there's 100 homes on the market that are active that are 3 bedrooms or more. But again, that's single family, townhouses, condos and stuff like that. But that's quite a high number. And I feel like I have 2 listings right now, sitting there, and if they've just been going days on the market, it keeps passing. Sellers are starting to sweat a little bit. So,
yeah. Before we continue, if you want to get a little bit closer to the mic, and if you just want to move that mic stand a little bit closer to you,
I can
it'll sound much better on the audio.
There we go. Yeah.
You guys are both coming in fine.
Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Perfect. Yeah, we have these new devices called cloud lifters that we connected to the mic cords, and the audio is coming out way better just in the last. We just used it for Kevin's episode, right?
Yeah, it's the second episode we're using it for.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But you could tell it's a huge difference.
Yeah. Good quality.
So the market, you're starting to notice it's slowing down then.
Oh yeah. So
now, are you working mainly with buyers or sellers?
I would say right now it's kind of even. Like at the beginning of the year, I had my hands full with just buyers, and then the last 5 months has been all listings. So it kind of goes back and forth, and so, just kind of noticing right now, having my 2 properties on the market. One is at a high price point, like high end, because it's a big house, 3,500 square feet.
What city?
It's in Concord.
Okay.
And
what's the price?
We had it listed at $1,050,000. And it was tough to kind of pull comps. I was having to pull comps in Crystal Ranch, which is, a close by area of Concord where the homes are bigger. This is built in 2008, my listing. And so, I felt like the price was right, definitely. But it was on the market 30 days, nothing. Like, I sent out a few disclosure packets, so I was like optimistic. But after 30 days, I was like, man, we got to do a price adjustment. It's a few things that I think were hurting us. One is the time of the year, the season is just outside of the big scheme of things, of it potentially being the beginning of a shift, just seasonally, I think it also has something to do with it too. Usually towards the end of summer and beginning of fall, you see a lot of inventory out there still, sellers that were late to the party and decided to put their houses on the market, and now it's just kind of flooded, and so you don't have as many buyers because they're.
So you think what's happening right now is a little bit more than just sellers late to the game for the summer game?
Yeah, I think because that is traditional. I feel like it just happens almost every year. But like I said, it could be the beginnings of what everybody's talking about, speculation of, the shift happening or whatever have you say. Because, I've always been told like 7 to 10 years, you tend to see some kind of shift, whether it's up or down. And then, if you look at the numbers, 2011, we were at the bottom of the market. And then since then, it's just kind of gone up, and we're in 2018. So those numbers start to kind of match up pretty good. That's about 7 years. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine, within now to the next year or two, we'll probably see some kind of shift going on. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are still very, very hesitant when it comes to real estate and the negative market news. I think as soon as you hear or see a headline that there's a market shift or a market correction, people tend to panic. And I think many people still remember the crash from 2007 and 8. Yeah. And you have a lot of buyers that decide to quickly sit on the sidelines to see what's going to happen next. Yeah. And then I think that just makes the snowball effect a little bit worse, because now you have buyers that probably in the traditional market shift would have still bought. Yeah. Maybe they would have made an offer 15, 20 grand less, but they would have made an offer. But now you just have people sitting on the sideline. Yeah. Now, do you see that also with the buyers that you are working with?
A little bit. Well, not necessarily the buyers I'm working with right now, but like everyone, like sphere of influence and just potential people that may have thought about buying are saying those things. You're like, oh, well, I'm just waiting for this bubble to burst again. And, I try to do my best. And what I tell them is, say, everybody remembers the big crash, and like to your point, that's what sticks in their mind, and they assume that it's going to be the exact same thing. And maybe we'll just wait till it hits to the bottom. Fortunately, we don't have a crystal ball to see that. What
and
is
I don't
actually
think we're
going
to have 80% depreciation.
Exactly.
Right?
There was a lot of factors contributing to that. To the crazy crash that happened. That was pretty much unheard of, but with all the regulations that went into action after that, and the buyers that have been buying since then being much more qualified, I don't think the same outcome is going to happen. I think it's just going to be a normal, like soft, market either slowing down, correcting itself, whatever you want to call it.
Typically a correction, they say it's anywhere from 3 to 5%, right?
Maybe
a little bit more than that.
I think could be a little bit more in our case, because it's just gone up so fast, so in such a short amount of time around here. Every market I think can be a little different. We're unique in our being in the Bay Area. We're not quite like the rest of the country, so our numbers are going to be a little different.
Yeah, I think in the news that if you look at the statistics, though, what's causing some fear, you have inventory really increasing, right? Yeah. So you have these people just flooding the market now with their properties for sale, but then the number of homes sold decreased. Yeah. Yeah. And so now you have two issues. It's not just the same number of people buying with an increase in inventory. You have two sides of the spectrum that are negatively impacting real estate market.
Right, and I feel like that's to what you were saying earlier. People are just thinking back to the crash and reacting to that. Sellers are worried. They just want to sell their house because they're, all right, it's at the top of the market. And then the buyers are like, well, let's just sit back and wait a little bit and see what the market's going to do. I think a good test will be what happens in the springtime, because traditionally, again, springtime is when you start to see it becomes more a seller's market because there's less inventory but a good amount of buyers. So, depending on how that goes will really give us a big indicator on, are we really in that kind of shift process or
it's going to be a very interesting winter this year, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of agents I heard do some of their best business in the wintertime because so many agents take time off and go do a little vacationing and traveling, and the ones that stick around usually get to reap all the benefits, and they get a lot of business during that time of the season. So
that's funny that you bring that up. I noticed that years ago when I was a new agent and not really taking any vacations because I was trying to work and make a sale, right?
Yeah, hungry.
And Yeah, and it was funny. Like the business would pick up during the fall and winter time because, yeah, I guess agents go on vacation, the successful ones, and then
Yeah.
the buyers that want to buy, they're in the market to buy. They want someone to show them property.
Right. And I think in the wintertime, it's sort of at a necessity for both sides. Ideally, sellers would prefer not to sell probably during the holidays, I would imagine, Christmas trees and all this stuff, whatever. But if they're putting their house on the market, it's probably because they have to. They're relocating due to life changes, work maybe, or whatever it could be. And then the buyers that are pretty hungry and set to find something, they'll still be out there in the wintertime looking for that good opportunity. So I think inventory is down and buyers are down, but the ones that are doing something are really serious. And then vice versa in the summertime, it's sort of similar, but the opposite. Now you have a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers, and then in the spring, low sellers, high buyers, and then fall, high sellers, low buyers in a way.
Now, are you seeing the increase of interest rates affecting buyers that want to buy? Like qualifications, or is
I don't think yet it's having too much of an impact. I see that we're still under 5%, which I think once we creep over to that next number, and seeing on average over 5%, then maybe it'll slow people down a little bit. But at the end of the day, I always try to tell the buyers, I say, the likelihood of it going down backwards is much smaller than it continuing to rise. Like if you look at the trends and the graphs, I have one that I always show when I do a buyer consult. The interest rates from 1972 to 2016, the average is like 8.5%, and I think it was like in the 80s where it was in the high teens. It was crazy. I couldn't imagine people buying. But,
18, 19%.
Yeah, that's insane. And then if you look at the average from I think 1990 something and take away that huge spike in the 80s, and from the 90s to 2016, the average is still 6.5%. And here we are at 4.5 to 5. It's solid. It's a great time to still purchase. And so that's what I try to educate the buyers on. Prices, may go up and down, but ultimately, historically, it will always kind of bounce back. I always say land is limited. You can't make more land. You can only, build on top of it, make stuff taller. So I think real estate will always continue to go up. And as long as you can afford your monthly payments, you'll be in a good shape to buy something, and you can ride the wave of it going down knowing that it'll come back up.
Now, I read somewhere, and this was a very interesting statistic, is that the average closed sale has a 35% down payment here in the Bay Area. Do you see that on your end as far as your business?
I mean, typically, I would say my clients, no, not really. Perhaps more in other areas like San Francisco, Oakland, and Silicon Valley. Where I'm at, the East Bay, Concord, Martinez, Pleasant Hill, some may have that, but I think on average, maybe more like 10 to 20% is still pretty normal. I had a lot of I've been working with a lot of first-time home buyers, and they're a lot less. They're probably around the 5% for first-time home buyers. But usually when it's either their second
repeat
house,
home buyers, second house,
they're putting down a lot more.
Are you noticing a lot of FHA deals going on, or is it still has it become hard to get FHA deals accepted?
Depends on where you're at, I think. Where it's more common to see it, it's not very hard. For example, maybe perhaps Pittsburgh and Antioch, Oakley is more common to see FHA offers come your way. And then, in Concord, you're not seeing as much. I think maybe more around the 5% to 10%, and then the surrounding cities like Walnut Creek, Pleasant Hill, it's more like the 10 to 20%. So it's just kind of depending on where you're at, what you're seeing, and then you got to get creative with those FHA offers because they may not necessarily stand. It's hard to sometimes compete against someone that is putting significant amount down payment, or 5 or 10%. So, of course, the love letters are huge. You got to do that. Nowadays, with technology, maybe even videos can be helpful. A little video that you can send to the agent. Or to the sellers, or to the agent to give the sellers of the buyers and blah blah blah. So those little things, if you can find an emotional attachment, those help. What else can you do?
Now, do you sell just in Concord, or what's your service
I would say
area?
Contra Costa County is my bread and butter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're still with Keller Williams, right?
Yeah. Been there.
Did you hear their announcement from a few weeks ago that they're going to start opening up virtual brokers or brokerages?
Virtual, I haven't heard too much about that. I know we're getting really heavy in the technology phase where they're trying to put in a lot of money into it to compete against some of these newer brokerages that are coming out that are, very tech heavy. But yeah, so it's exciting to hear what's going on the back end, and we're still in progress, and it'll be a little bit before it's completely ready to go.
Yeah, I have to say I was impressed with their announcement on going toward a virtual brokerage, because I know Keller Williams has done a lot to provide tools for agents, training, education.
Yeah.
But then also on the technology front, I believe they're the first broker and they did this like 2 years ago, where they opened up their in-agent software, their API basically, and allowed for other third parties to create products for them, and they can tap into an API.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if you've seen that on your agent end, because I know it's still fairly new.
Yeah, it hasn't, I would say, got exposed out yet to too many places. I'm not super familiar with all of the products that they are now offering. I wish I would have. They had a tech class just yesterday. Unfortunately, I had appointments lined up, so I wasn't able to make it. But I think they probably touched on that. I know we have this new software called Kelly that really helps us tie into what's going on, like Market Snapchat.
Is that their
Snapchats.
version of Amazon Alexa?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another thing that I thought was really cool that they're doing. So they're really focusing on, and I think they're doing a good job on seeing where the future is going.
Yeah.
And they want to start adapting the capabilities in-house, which I think is great.
Absolutely. Gary Keller is great about foreseeing what is coming and trying to be at the, leading front edge of all of that stuff. And so yeah, he's on top of it, and we'll see some good trends. I mean, it's interesting with how Compass and a lot of these other brokerages, EXP and stuff like that, they're trying to.
They're buying market share, though.
They're buying. They have a lot of money backing them from the.
Well, was it? I believe it's Compass. I just bought Pacific Union.
Yeah. Yep, they bought Pacific Union, and I'm not sure, but perhaps I think they're getting help from like maybe Google or something like that, but they're able to head hunting a lot of the top producing agents to try to bring them on, and so I don't know. I think the way that it's laid out is, when you're looking at real estate companies, you have companies of the old school that is mainly agent focused. And then you have other companies that are agent with technology backing. And then the newer ones are more technology based with agent backing, which could be more like your Redfins and stuff like that. And then you have other ones where it'll just be.
Well, you have EXP, that's a virtual broker.
Yeah.
And that's exploding really big. And I want to say they're the fastest growing company right now in the real estate industry in the nation.
Yeah. I believe it.
But see, that's a whole virtual brokerage model, which is now, and I thought it was funny that Keller Williams decided, hey, we're going to go this route also. So I'm really curious to see how they're going to integrate both the brick and mortar offices with the virtual offices and how that's going to help their business.
Right,
But I
right.
think it's exciting with the way they try to innovate.
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal will still be, being agent focused, but just heavier on the technology side to give them to have the best of both worlds, because it is a relationship type of business. People want to do business with someone they trust and like and something about the brick and mortar. I feel like to get the training. Because at the end of the day, I feel the training is one of the most important things that one can get when you get into real estate. And, I feel like it's just hard sometimes when you are just a virtual type of brokerage. You may have all the webinars and, all the different videos to watch and read. But for me personally, and again, it's not for everybody, but I like to be like in a classroom setting and like be able to be in front of somebody and hear their firsthand experiences and ask questions, be a little more interactive and stuff like that. So that works for me, which is why I don't know I don't appeal to the virtual brokerage, but I can see it where it could be helpful for like expansion teams and stuff like that.
Yeah, I figure Keller Williams sees the trend,
Yeah.
and they're like, why can't we just offer both?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they wouldn't have to rebuild a lot of their training material because they already have it.
Yeah.
So I think it would be very easy transition. So I think it's a smart move on their part.
Yeah.
So there was a question in the San Francisco Chronicle, and this has been a big discussion in California for like the last probably year and a half to 2 years because of that one big lawsuit down in San Diego where someone bought a property, something wasn't disclosed to them, and then they sued Coldwell Banker, basically saying, hey, you should have known, because even though it was two separate agents, you have one overseeing broker, and something was not disclosed to me by one agent, but the other agent knew, but that other agent didn't represent that party. So that might be a little too confusing to break it down on audio.
Yeah,
but
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but the conversation came around that, okay, can an agent truly represent both a buyer and a seller at the same time? And there's actually two things. So just to give the listeners and viewers a little bit of background here, you have, in real estate, you have people licensed as a salesperson, and then you have people licensed as a broker. Correct. The salesperson has to work under a broker, and the broker is in charge of overseeing that agent. Right. So when a person decides to list their house with company one, right, and then an agent from that same office, but it may not be Alex Lopez, but they're within the same office and they represent the buyer, that's still considered dual agency because of the overseeing broker. It's one broker.
Right. Exactly.
Technically, yeah. But then the argument is, yeah, but it's two separate agents. They're getting completely different representation, but it's under the overseeing broker.
Right.
So the courts ruled that it was okay, and dual representation seems like it's not going to go away. But then let's talk about the ethics of it.
Sure.
Can you truly represent a seller? You're trying to sell the property for a highest price, but at the same time, can you represent the buyer and trying to negotiate the best price for them?
Right. So I think there are, two ways to respond to that. In the instance where it's a broker and they have agents underneath them, just to give you an idea, like our Keller Williams office in Walnut Creek has like over 250 agents that work under the Walnut Creek office. And then the same broker in Danville, she has there's 400 plus agents. So the likelihood of agents under the same brokerage is very high because you're looking, that's over 600, 700 agents working together. So for them
proper marketing, if you're a Keller Williams agent, you want the other 649 agents at the two Keller Williams offices, right?
Yeah.
To know about the listing.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives. I use it as a selling feature when I sit down with clients. Is I talk to them about Keller Williams and say this is how it can help you. Is during our weekly marketing meetings and blah blah blah. I can get up and already let people know and get them excited about your listing because of and get the word out to all these agents. So I think for that instance. There isn't a problem with two separate agents under the same brokerage and doing dual agency in that respect. It's up to the broker to make sure that these agents get trained in proper protocol and how to handle the transaction. And so you just have to have those right systems in place and the right people in place to oversee and help and make sure that everything's okay. Now, on the other hand, where it gets a little trickier is when you have one agent that is representing both sides. So whether that's just a sales agent or a broker working by themselves, do I think that is ethical? I think it really comes down to the agent. It really depends. So the reason I say that is because I've done dual representation where I've represented the seller and the buyer. The downside, though, is there's a lot of bad agents that instead of putting their client's interest in the forefront, they think about themselves first. And it's hard. How do you police that? Because, if you're that type of agent that is thinking of, your own best interest no matter what, then that's a terrible situation. Then you're asking for trouble because that's when lawsuits happen and whatnot. But if you're the type of agent that no matter how much it can hurt you, your best interest is always on the clients, then I think it can work. But key to that is first, communication, having open lines of communication on both ends. So to give you an example, one of the last times that I represented both sides is I was at an open house, and before I even do open houses, when I get the listing, I talk to the sellers about this possibility. And I say, there is a chance during an open house somebody may come in, doesn't have an agent, and may ask me to write an offer for them. The first thing that I'm going to do is check with you, seller, to see if you're comfortable with that. And if you are, then I'm going to also let the buyers know I can't give you any inside information whatsoever. The only thing that I'm going to be able to tell you is how many offers I have in hand, and that's because I would tell any agent that asked me that question. So I'm not going to tell you, buyer, anything that I wouldn't be able to tell any other agent. And if you're cool with that, then all right, I'm okay with writing an offer for you. But I'm also going to write the offer before I open up any other offers as well. So let's say I start getting offers in my inbox and I know somebody wants me to write an offer for them. I'm not going to open any of the offers. I'm just leaving them in my inbox until I make sure that I write the offer for these buyers. So that way I don't have any privy information or anything like that. And so
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
I like the very first piece, though, that you mentioned where you talk to the seller up front before the open house and communicate that.
Yeah, exactly. And because they want to know, like if I were to bring it up later and say, oh, a buyer wants me to write for them, they're going to think, well, how is that going to work? Is it going to be, are you going to give them information, this and that, whatever? And so I just like to – it's all about setting expectations. The earlier you can set expectations and for every scenario, the better off the whole transaction is going to be and everybody's going to be happier. So yeah. And the other thing that I do, and not everybody may do this, but I like to try to make it a win-win for everybody. So I will also let the sellers know when you have dual variable and stuff like that. So I mark yes because what I will let them know.
A lot of people don't know what that means, though.
Well, it basically means whatever you agreed to as far as the commission. Let's say it's 6%, 3 goes to each side. Then if you end up writing an offer, that commission will still stay at that amount. There's not going to be a discount to the seller for you writing an offer, essentially. So what I tell the seller is, I say, because it all comes down to a net sheet that I put together of all the offers and line them up and stuff like that. And so I will tell them that, hey, if we get an offer and you guys decide to accept the offer because it's the best one, I will go ahead and discount my commission so that you can have a little something back. And the reason I do that is because, at the end of the day, it's a lot easier if you're kind of doing both sides because you're not having to hunt somebody down and track them down and collect all the paperwork and stuff like that.
It's one less party, a little bit easier to control.
Easier, exactly. But then what I also tell the seller is said, but at the same time, it's double the liability, double the work that I'm doing and stuff like that to kind of help
possibly
justify.
even more liability because if someone doesn't feel their best interest is being represented, now you may have a problem.
Right. And that's why the open lines of communication is super important. So, I will say
I would probably throw in document everything.
Yeah.
If you have a phone conversation, write down notes immediately after.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Absolutely.
Or email communication.
I was going to say, usually in those instances, email is the best to try to handle most of the communication because you have an actual written documents and stuff like that you can go back to. So I would try to communicate everything, especially regarding the transaction and stuff like that, any negotiations via email. Or I have a conversation with my client, whichever one it may be, and then follow that conversation up with an email just to, cover what we talked about, blah, 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 just so that way they get it and they can verify that's what we talked about.
Okay.
So have a paper trail.
So it would be possible. It just depends on the agent.
I think so. And it's, again, hard because how do you police that? How can you tell an agent is ethical in his actions and not until they get caught doing something? So,
I think that comes down to just like anything else, like if you want to find out who the best doctor in the area is, you're going to research, right?
Yeah.
If you want to find someone in some industry with some specialty, you're going to research that person. You're going to go onto Yelp, Google, maybe ask friends and family for referral. You're going to ask for client references from people and interview multiple people, not just one person.
Yeah.
Because you may have a list of 5 great agents, but you may be compatible or you may like 1 or 2 people more than the others.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't,
absolutely.
because every agent has their own different style.
Yeah.
So I think part of it comes down to if you're going to do business with anyone, you should research the person you're working with, right?
Absolutely. I use it as one of my scripts too, like when I am, let's say, talking to a potential seller lead, and they already said, "Oh, we have an agent or somebody that we've used in the past or whatever," and of course, nothing's been signed or anything at this point. But if they're still in the early phases, I usually will say, I understand you may already have somebody in mind, but just keep this in mind. This is the biggest investment that usually people have. And you don't owe me anything. You don't owe the other agent anything. You just owe yourself to make sure you do the best research and make sure you get the best person for the job. So if you're open to it, I'd love to just sit down with you and share with you what I do. And maybe it's different, maybe it works for you better or not, but at least now you've talked to a couple people. So that's usually a way that I can try to get myself in there for an opportunity, at least, to do a listing appointment with them.
Mm-hmm. Out of curiosity, are you doing a lot of social media marketing?
I would say that I'm doing about average, maybe a little bit more. I use Facebook a lot. I have my Instagram and LinkedIn and all those other ones.
Have you gotten leads off Facebook?
Yeah. So I get, but it's mainly through my sphere of influence. And so I still boost and have my business page and then my personal page, which is still kind of business related. And so,
do you get more leads off your personal page or the business page?
I would say more off of the personal page because I have more connections on the personal page than I do the business page. and it's just a way to stay at top of mind awareness with among your friends and family without having to bother them more than needed.
Yeah.
So people see you doing good things. They tend to be like, wow, all right, he must be doing something right. So let me give him a call. Or it's just you throw it out there, and the majority of people will just kind of look past things. But the moment that they are in that mindset of needing to do something real estate related, hopefully, something will pop up to remind them of you.
Yeah, and I asked you that question because I feel like there's two schools of thought when it comes to Facebook marketing. You have agents that say, no, you have to do a business page and market there. And that's what I did years ago. I did my Facebook business page, I want to say 2010 or 11.
Okay.
And then you have agents that say, no, because there's nothing to post on this business page. I've got nothing else to really post except housing, and I'm not going to get a lot of followers. Building up followers can be tough, right?
Uh-huh.
And so they already have their personal page,
Yeah.
so they just use that personal page for a lot of business.
Yeah.
I was more on the side of, no, you got to do a business page, because the personal page, people don't want to be seeing all your business posts all the time.
Correct.
But then I talked to some agents that use a personal page successfully,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of changed my thinking on it, because I think a good mixture of both is where you can really extract as many leads and business from Facebook.
Yeah. I think it could almost be like the business page and the personal page, like a reverse of each other. So let's say the personal page, maybe it's like 70% personal stuff and 30% business stuff. And on your business page, make it 70% business stuff and 30%, a little personal stuff, not super personal, but people want to see you being real. And so the benefit of the business page, why one of the main things is the ability to boost certain posts to specific target markets, demographics, and whatever. So I like to use that as a tool for, let's say, when I have a open house coming on a new property on the market. So I will boost it for that whole area there to try to get as many people in. Or if I'm looking for specific buyers that are perhaps in a certain demographic area that I think would be a perfect for this listing, then I'm going to go and target those types of buyers. So you got to, I think, be able to use both. And yeah, if you use your personal page and only do business stuff, people are going to get tired of that real quick.
Yeah.
So you got to find that balance. You got to do a little bit of both.
Yeah, have you kept up with San Francisco Millennium Tower?
A little bit. I heard about the whole window cracking. That's kind of crazy. Like, it's sinking.
I guess, Sam, you could probably clarify this. Did it sink another 18 inches or 18 inches total?
I think it's 18 inches so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I think
crazy.
So too. Yeah. I mean,
I'd be
18
pissed. I'd be pissed if I was
Like,
one of the
chill.
owners, or,
Yeah.
I mean, at least a renter, you can probably get out of your lease, negotiate, move out,
Yeah.
do something. But,
Yeah.
I mean, imagine buying a condo there and then...
Imagine trying to resell it. Like,
Yeah.
you're never going to be able to get
No
out of
one's
that
gonna
place.
buy it.
No.
I mean, if I was representing the buyer and they say, I want to buy in this tower, I'm like, it's tilting. Don't buy it.
Right?
Like,
Exactly.
it's
yeah.
on its way down slowly.
Literally. So when does it become
Like a
more
hazard.
concern?
Yeah.
Like, are pipes, is it when pipes start bursting or more windows cracking? It was just like the one window from what I understand. But is that going to lead to more?
I believe they got an estimate to fix the tower, I want to say a year or two ago, when the issue started to really come out.
Yeah.
And they started noticing it. And they got an estimate, but I believe the estimate was so extremely high to fix it that it was just one of those, well, I guess kind of let's just wait and see if it's really going to get worse.
Yeah. Damn, I really don't know, like, what the fix is there. Like, is the builder responsible to, like...
Well, how old is that building?
I don't know. Sam, do you know?
Pretty new.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's under 10 years, the builder would be responsible for that.
Right.
But if it's a builder that, I mean, there's some builders that because they're on the hook for up to 10 years for any structural defects, right?
Yeah.
Which is why you see a lot of HOA condominium developments
Yeah.
that will sue the builder
Yeah.
at the 10-year mark because they're going to try to get a settlement, or they can win a lawsuit against them. They can get the builder to pay for whatever defects are going on.
Yeah.
But you have some smaller builders, and I'm not talking about like Toll Brothers, KB Homes. These are massive companies that they don't want a bad reputation. So they're either going to settle, fix it, or something, right? They're going to figure it out, I think, for the most part. Yeah. But some smaller developers, one tactic that they use is they will make a development, build a development.
It opened back in 2009.
2009, okay.
It's coming close to the
So
10-year mark.
Yeah. So if that's the case, most likely, I would assume, can you see if they sued the developer already on this? I would imagine they did as soon as it started to tell. I don't know why they wouldn't have done it by now. So I assume they've done it.
But like, let me ask you this now: does it fall also on the engineer or whoever put together the plans?
I think the overall builder,
just overall
because
builder.
They're the ones who built it. If they subcontracted out, then they're still on the hook, but they may have grounds to then sue that subcontractor for bad work.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like a whole chain. You're still, or like a broker, you're at the top.
Yeah.
You're responsible for these agents.
In March 2017, the Homeowners Association filed a suit against the Millennium Partners, Webcor, Handel Architects, Treadwell and Rollo, Langen, D. Simone Consulting Engineers, ARUP, and the Transbay Joint Powers Authority.
So they sued everyone.
Yeah, pretty much everybody seeking $200 million to cover repairs and damages.
Wow, $200 million. Yeah.
Wow.
And then about a week and a half ago, residents reported hearing various creaking sounds around the building.
Yeah, so when it first broke that it was starting to tilt, there were some architects and engineers that looked at it, and they were on television saying, yeah, this was poorly designed and poorly built. And of course they're making themselves look better too, but they're like, I wouldn't have done this because of this reason. But it sounded like they knew what they were talking about. Right. And a lot of them, and how often do you hear of a building tilting and sinking into the ground? You would have figured that all these professionals would have caught something. Yeah. So I think it was just a big giant mess up.
Yeah. Totally. It'll be interesting to find out how it all pans out. I mean, is the building eventually just going to collapse if there's a big earthquake, or what? They got to hopefully try to get this stabilized.
So a couple other bits. So the foundation is on a giant concrete slab that's about 60 to 90 feet deep. And then they have friction piles that they fill with bay mud and some Colma sand. And then apparently they built it too close to the Transbay, the giant transit center. So, they kind of dug out a big hole there to put the transit center in. I think that's what kind of caused it to start sinking, is they dug a little too close to the building.
Mm-hmm. That's a big concern that they have with Elon Musk because, City of Los Angeles basically approved him to build tunnels underneath the city for his, he's got a boring company. Do you know that?
No, that guy's got his hands in everything.
Yeah, so he's got a boring company, and the idea is right now to build tunnels underneath the actual streets because you could pull into, let's say, a mini elevator. It drops you into the tunnel, locks your car in, and then shoots you off to wherever you want to go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, way faster. You bypass all the traffic, everything.
Yeah.
No lights. Yeah. So great system in theory, but then how are you going to do this? So he developed this big, giant boring machine that just builds a tunnel at the same time it's digging the tunnel. Oh, it's a total trip and very cool to watch. Wow. And so they approved them to do a few little test tunnels. And I know he's got a lot of smart people on his team and he's a genius himself. But my thing is, how safe are the structures going to be on top of those tunnels?
Right.
But I guess the tunnels are supposedly indestructible because of this. I guess they can hold a ton of support because they're obviously round, right? And because of the way they're designed, they can't really allow for the ground above to collapse.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting, but
Wow, that guy is pretty amazing. Did you by chance watch that little video of him and Joe Rogan?
Yeah, I watched the whole podcast when I saw that, like all the news going crazy. I actually saw it on Twitter, and I'm like, okay, I have to see the
Right.
podcast. So I'm watching the podcast on YouTube, and it wasn't until the very end. The entire time, I'm like, when is he gonna smoke weed?
Yeah.
I'm waiting. And so he finally gets toward the end of the podcast, and he decides to try it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it? That's all he did? But you know what? Some people have
Just like
explained,
one little hit.
you've got a publicly traded company,
Yeah.
right? You're in the news all the time.
Uh-huh.
You're probably considered by most of the world to be one of the smartest people alive on this planet, and you're a huge innovator. Everyone's watching you. Anything you do could go against you, and that's what happened. His stock price dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it'll come back up. I don't know. Do you think
I just
at the
feel
end of
bad
the-
for him. He can't even have a little fun.
I know. Jeez, under a microscope.
Yeah.
But,
But that's the way it is.
I think a
though.
lot of other people though will look at it and just him being real, and maybe will, like probably the younger generation will relate to him more, or will just like him even more than before. Just
Well, I
'cause
think
he's kinda-
most people already forgot about it.
Yeah.
No one even cares about it anymore. Everyone just talks about it as if,
I don't know.
hey,
It's
do you
it's a
remember
pretty
that?
popular meme now.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great meme. Yeah.
So I mean, it'll stay as long as that meme's around. It's still gonna.
Yeah.
It's still
I mean,
gonna
he
be
did
relevant.
say on the podcast, too, that he wasn't a fan of it because
Yeah.
it really disrupts productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was funny, like just watching the video, I felt like the one hit that he did kind of did mess with him a little bit. He had some funny.
I don't know. That was an amateur
facial-
hit. Like, he didn't really know what he was doing.
His facial expressions. I didn't see the whole entire podcast, so I don't know how he was before. But it just kind of seemed like he wasn't all there through some of his facial expressions or mannerisms and stuff like that. But it could have just been that's the way he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was pretty entertaining. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a fun podcast. But it's very interesting. Like, if you listen to the entire thing,
Yeah.
there's a question that's asked, and there's a lot of just dead silent space, and you're waiting for him to respond.
Right.
And he finally responds, but he really takes his time to think about a lot of these questions being asked.
Yeah. Just how his mind works.
Yeah,
I guess.
just interesting.
Yeah, Joe Rogan is really good at his, doing his podcast. The way he, like, interviews people and talks to them.
Well, one of the
Didn't
things he
even realize.
does that he's been doing. I mean, keep in mind too, he's also at episode almost 1200, I think, or he passed 1200. So he's been doing the podcast for, I believe, 10 years. Like, he's been doing a lot, and he's knocking out a lot of episodes. And just in our 158 episodes, I've noticed myself getting better at podcasting as a host.
Yeah.
Just over those number of episodes, right? So the more you go, the better you get. The more it's practice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the one thing that he does that's pretty amazing is that he will research the hell out of the guest,
Yeah.
out of topics, and he knows a lot about you.
Yeah.
And he knows how to perfectly push it along,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I mean,
That's pretty
it also depends on your guests too.
Yeah.
If you have a great guest that will talk and talk and talk and have great stories,
Yeah.
great. But when you have a guest where they don't talk, it's like pulling teeth.
Yeah,
And then you have
can
to
imagine.
kind of hold it up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he said in one of his recent podcasts that he's had people, because his podcast will go 2 or 3 hours easy.
That's crazy.
And he's had people burn out at the 45 minute mark.
Yeah,
And then they don't talk.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what do you do after that? And you'll see him, he kind of has to start doing some stand-up comedy, on the show.
He's good about just active listening and with the questions. Like you said, he does his research and knows how to make it flow. And it's pretty cool to see how that whole thing, and you as well, absolutely. I just feel like this is the second time I've been with you, but I think the first time I was
We got to have
with
you on the podcast more often. Because every time you come here, you always educate me.
and I got some little bits of nuggets of information here and there. But yeah, man, you're right. I think doing it over and over, you kind of figure out ways to what questions to ask or how to transition nicely and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I appreciate
you
that.
definitely
Yeah, a
improve.
lot of the questions, actually all the questions are Sam.
Yeah, good job,
Yeah.
Sam boy. Doing good things.
Yeah, he
So-
does good research and puts a great thing together. And then,
Yeah,
of course,
that
it's
one.
real estate, which I love to talk about.
Right, right. Interesting thing that I'll share with you too. Monday. I'm right now in the phase of looking to hire an assistant, so just kind
Okay.
of going through that process, which is totally new to me. Me and a colleague of mine that I share an office with, we're gonna probably split an assistant since we don't necessarily need it full time, each of us.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah, that's a smart
do
idea.
2 part time. It's in theory it's smart, but I think at the end it probably is not meant to last too long because
No, the idea is to pick up more business.
Yeah.
And then you'll need a full-time assistant.
Exactly. And so, it will require some open lines again of communication and figuring out what the boundaries are because the test will be like if we split it, 50-50, when the assistant isn't working for me, not to intervene or ask or bother the assistant when it's not my time,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So and I can imagine being a little challenging, like if you need something done right away and you can't get to it, you want to ask, for help.
The problem I've
So,
seen with shared assistants is that they kind of assume they put them to work 9 to 5, like typical 8-hour day, but then everyone's got access to that person.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a problem with, you're using this person more than I am.
Yeah.
We should redo the split.
Right.
And then issues happen, right?
Yeah.
Especially when urgent things come up.
Yeah.
Really, the best way to do it is just have them set hours. Like 9 to 1 is you.
Yeah.
1 to 5 p.m. is the other agent.
Yeah.
And then it's set hours. And then it's easier for you to plan your day because if you have stuff, especially that's not important, that can wait till the next day,
Yeah.
you delegate and push it off till the next day for them to handle for you.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all planning.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're looking to do. And so we had the whole interview process. So my colleague, she has a business coach. And so he helped us out kind of do this because he does interviews all the time and whatever. So we decided to do a panel interview and bring in like a bunch of applicants and sit them at a table.
Side by side together?
Yeah, just kind of like a round table in a way. Not a round table, but like a rectangular table.
Yeah.
And have them all sit there in front of each other and kind of go through a little introduction about our mission, our values, and what we're about, and then going and asking each one of them different questions and doing like a one by one and or like a round robin sort of thing. So after one person
I
starts,
feel like that can be a video, not a video game, but like a game show.
yeah, could be, and it was intense. It was fun. It was. So we didn't tell any of them that this is what they were going to be doing. So they were
Okay.
also kind of caught off guard. But it's a good way to see how they handle those types of kind of unexpected situations. It's kind of part of the little test in a way.
What was the result?
So we narrowed it down to about 3 solid candidates, and we're gonna follow back up with them and do like a one-on-one interview with each of those, and then move on, go from there. So
I'll have to check in with you probably in 6 months to a year and see how that turned out.
yeah, it's a great because it can be so time consuming trying to find an assistant or just any hire basically to go through that whole interview process one at a time. So the most apparently we found out the most effective way is to just get, you don't want to do a room of like 20 or something like that. We had 6, but like anywhere between 6 to maybe 10. But like usually around 6 is solid. And you block out 2 hours and you have allotted questions, and then the code like 2:30 hit. We put everybody in the room. Anybody shows up a minute later, goodbye. Sorry, you missed the cutoff. And somebody apparently had to get sent back home. That was there. I was like, oh, we just told the front desk person, could you send anybody back home that that makes it late? And so he said he just had to send somebody back, and I'm like, ooh, kind of feel bad, but it shows you everybody else, sets a precedence of like, all right, we can't be late kind of thing. And it was overall a good experience. All of them were pretty solid. I was impressed with the pool of candidates. So it's kind of going to be sad for the ones that we can't, pick, but they'll find, I'm sure, a great job. But,
It's very cool.
yeah, it was nice. And then after that process, there's some personality assessment tests that you can have them take,
Yep.
just to kind of see what their style is, and then the one-on-one interviews and kind of so on and so forth.
Yeah, what I've been testing recently is a virtual assistant,
Yeah.
and basically just seeing how some tasks and some, especially data entry,
Yeah.
how in my business, in my company, I'm like, okay, well, we could probably have a virtual assistant do this.
Yeah.
So I started looking into virtual assistants, and virtual assistants here in the US it's like hiring anyone else, right?
Right.
So I looked at Virtual Staff Finder, and they're located out of the Philippines.
Yeah, that's
And
commonplace.
I started doing some research, and it was interesting to see how a lot of the banks during the foreclosure years built these large centers where they would just handle all kinds of paperwork.
Yeah.
And we're talking about real estate contracts and documents.
Yeah.
And so after the foreclosure dried up and the market changed around, going back up positive 2011 and 12, they basically just abandoned a lot of these, I guess, virtual assistant centers.
Yeah.
But then there were other companies that stepped in to hire those people and contract them out to a ton of different companies. So now there's like a big industry in the Philippines of just a lot of virtual assistants that work from home with a headset. They have internet, computer, and they're able to do at least virtual work.
Yeah.
And so I've got one right now that's doing data entry who is doing a phenomenal job, I think.
Oh, really? That's great. No, I've heard a lot of people have success with that, the virtual assistants out over there and a lot of other places too.
It's just a little scary because you can't meet the people in person.
Yeah.
But we did Skype interviews.
Oh, there you go. Absolutely. And the resumes at some of these, because I put an ad out for that personal assistant job, and somebody had reached out to me from, I guess, the Philippines, it probably was, and showed me their resume and like what they've done. It was like dead on what I would kind of need as well, and they're like familiar with a lot of the stuff that the different tests that we would have them do, and DISC personality, KPA, and all these other things, and so I think they can be very useful for me at this point. I don't know. I like knowing that somebody is right physically here, that I can kind of train them the way that I want, them to do certain things or whatever.
That was my initial hesitation with a virtual assistant, and it's a little tough to get over that. But then after the hire and how things just kind of went easy, I was like, huh. Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep that in mind for.
So do they do any like calling too? Because I know some of them will do like
they do.
outbound
So
calls.
the only thing is you have to pay a little extra if you want them to be on certain hours because they're, I want to say 9 hours behind, or I'm not sure, but it's completely different hours, right?
Yeah.
So if we need, so he'll call like our utility companies, and he'll make transfers from the old owner or the tenant to our company. And so in order to make those calls, I believe he has to start at, he would have to start at like midnight.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you pay a little bit extra, you do have people that will work night shifts.
Right.
And they're kind of used to it over there because they've built these industries around it. Yeah. And he's been a virtual assistant and he's had quite a bit of real estate experience. I mean, he did BPOs and appraisals. And that's the funny thing. There's a lot of appraisers that will hire virtual assistants to do all the data entry.
Wow.
Because you've seen how packed full of information. And then that way they can just focus on doing appraisals.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you say pay a little extra, that really doesn't mean too much extra, because it's like probably the basics. It's like $4 an hour. To do something a little more, it's like $8 an hour.
Yeah, in the Philippines,
crazy.
the average or the median salary in the Philippines is $6,000 per year.
Wow, that's insane.
So I am paying $800 a month. That's what $9,800 a year. So I'm paying
Yeah.
quite a bit more than that, and they had a good selection of applicants.
Really?
But that company, Virtual Staff Finder, made it very easy. What they do is you pay them a $500 fee.
Yep.
They go out and they will put the ads out. They will find people, and then they will interview people and give you the top 5.
Oh, okay.
And then these top 5, you can then interview these people, and it's impressive. Like, I was wondering what they were going to give me, but they give me the application, they give me a resume, they give me a full screening report, they do a full assessment report. I mean, it's very, very detailed, and I was really impressed.
Yeah.
And they'll also have them record, you ask certain questions, and then the actual applicants will record, so you can even hear like a voicemail or something.
Yeah.
Where, like an audio file, where they're answering these questions. And then, of course, you can interview them over Skype.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, too, some of them can get rid of their accent and sound just like they were here, born and raised in.
Yeah, a lot of them are very fluent in English,
Yeah,
both written and speaking, because in many other countries, and that's the one thing that,
English is pretty common.
Yeah, learning English is a necessity because that's how you're going to work, because many countries have to compete on a global scale, because their local economy might not be the best. So they have to learn English, and English tends to be like a universal language in the world. So a lot of them learn English from a young age, and they're really fluent, most of them. And if you're working for 5-10 years in real estate contracts and appraisals and stuff, your English gets even better.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna look into that too. I think the virtual assistant could have a good application, and
yeah, they're great for data entry, or if you find one that specializes in graphic design, audio, video editing. A lot of the things that can be done solo or from a computer, that's really where you can typically just hire a virtual assistant. And if you use like Google G Suite, you can add them on as a team member and have them or give them access to certain team drives. And from there, all the documents are shared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, G Suite has a great setup for businesses.
So G Suite, and then I'm also going to take away what would you say the staffing was?
A Virtual Staff Finder is the name of the company.
Virtual Staff Finder. I have to look that up.
Yeah,
too.
their owner, Chris Ducker, British guy, but he's got a great podcast. So he's got a podcast called Youpreneurs, and that's actually how I found out about his company.
Okay.
And he's got a great business podcast that you can listen to where he interviews other people and they break down a wide range of industries and how to do more sales, how to become more efficient. So if you're into podcasts, definitely check out Youpreneur.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Youpreneur. Sounds good, my man.
So Alex, thanks for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, it was a great episode. We talked about a lot of things. And like I said, you literally teach me something every single time you're here. So I definitely want to get you on the podcast a lot more often. And then I'll check in with you in the next 6 to 12 months to see who you hired and how that hire turned out. Because that's a very interesting hiring style that I've never heard before.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that turns out for you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure.
And if anyone wants to do business with you, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, you can either email me, my email address, alex@lopezlistings.com, or you can reach me on my cell, 925-338-7554. And, happy to help. All right.
Perfect.
Let me know. Cool.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.